a reminder that all of the lesson slides are available on the Google site, including all the flashcards that are referred to in this lesson slide. So this lesson recap is going to go through all the media theories that you will need for the BTEC Unit 1 Media Representations exam. You will need to name drop those theorists as and when you use their theory to show that you fully understand the theory and which theory belongs to which theorist. And it is subject terminology if you are able to bring this into an answer, and you will get rewarded for clear, confident, and accurate use of the media theorists' names. And crucially as well, images. It acknowledges that stars are manufactured. You don't know Tom Cruise, you just know the image that Tom Cruise constructs in the media, okay, through, for example, chat shows and the Richard Dyer star theory lesson slide and accompanying video. We can also use Richard Dyer's. So he said that those with power are able to stereotype those who do not have power. So, for example, in the newspapers, in tabloids, by the large publications who have the financial backing. So again, there will be a Richard Dyer stereotype lesson for you to go into a little bit more detail. So Richard Dyer said that those with power stereotype over those with less power, and it is in particular reference to news broadcasts, and acknowledging that most media producers, cinematographers, games developers, perhaps even just and fewer opportunities for females to get into those positions. And as a result of that, the media that we experience as audience members will traditionally be seen and constructed via the eyes metaphor. And there are two separate aspects to this theory that you will need to remember. Okay. So Andy Medhurst, we can use Andy Medhurst again for stereotypes, but in a different way to how we previously just used Richard Dyer. Stereotypes are a media shorthand, often referred to as a shortcut. That's what the theorist is and what the theory said, but in particular, how and why might we use it? So for example, stereotypes are used as a media shorthand. So Andy Medhurst used for media shorthand when it comes to stereotypes. Stuart Hall, there are a number of different aspects to the theory, much like Richard Dyer and Laura Mulvey. One of which is that he said reality is constantly mediated. Okay, so there's a direct quote that you could perhaps use in an answer. And what this means is that the ideology of those who receive it, the encoder and the decoder. This is often referred to as reception theory, how texts are received differently, or alternate readings, how texts are used. Also, perhaps you might have a preferred or an ideal reading, and again, acknowledgement of there being different theory of binary oppositions. Okay, it's a narrative theory. We will have discussed this early on when perhaps another. Okay, so any concept that can be considered a pair of two opposing values. Levi-Strauss action codes, symbolic codes, but in particular in our coursework we may have looked at enigma codes quite yet, and the enigma might lead to mystery, cliffhangers, hype, anticipation, when perhaps they get it correct. Okay, so enigma codes, also a narrative technique. Roland Barthes. Todorov. So an acknowledgement of a linear, narrative, chronological, a traditional beginning, middle, and end, equilibrium, in respect to a mainstream audience understanding, a narrative possibly linked to fairy tales, the study of signs, okay, where signs are used to convey meaning of some sort. Okay, we could then explore the fact that polysemy links to multiple meanings, poly meaning more than one, okay, semi coming from the word semiotics. Semiotics, the study of signs. Audiences accept media messages that are injected, hence it being perhaps a metaphor, to a text and alternate ways to receive a text, but the acknowledgement that passive audiences receive messages in perhaps broadcast news or print news, in particular in tabloids, acknowledging that powerful groups of people are able to blame a negative situation on a group of people, a demographic, a minority, who are then referred to as folk devils. Basically, they're being made to scapegoat something. So, for example, immigrants, again, the jobless, the working class, LGBT, sometimes even femininity unto itself in the tabloids, often blamed for the standard of living, the lack of job opportunities in a particular country. Plummer Katz, the uses and gratifications theory. Okay, argument that audiences make active decisions. Okay, so this would disagree with any theorists that would suggest audiences are passive. Okay, so user gratifications acknowledge that audience members seek certain things from certain media products that are attractive to them, and they get a certain gratification. And the gratifications are usually personal identity, where you relate to something or someone. Media product. Escapism, where you will use a media product to escape or divert your attention, or to forget about any troubles you might have had earlier that day. Escapism. And knowledge, where you might use something to understand, often referred to as surveillance. You will learn something from the media product, and you will gain an insight from it. Marxism is a critique of capital to have lots of power and influence over larger groups of people who don't have perhaps as much money. Model, where a small group of people at the top might have a lot of money and a large group of people at the bottom might not have. Actually, why that is relevant, how you could then use it in a situation where you'll be deconstructing. Thank you and good luck for the exam.